Okay, let's get this.
Okay, Nate.
Joan Young, Vice President, Public Hospital District Number 4, calling a special meeting, the public budget hearing to order.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Trying to, there you go, do it all. Okay. I'm calling the meeting of King County Public Hospital District public budget hearing to order. It is 6:16. How about if we do flag salute?
Okay, I would like, before we start, and I apologize for this, but I had, you don't know, but I talked to Daryl about doing this. And given that tomorrow's Veterans Day, I'd like to take a minute and I'd like to recognize our veterans. Now, we have some veterans here in the room with us, and two that I know of here are on this list. And I'd like to just take a minute and let you and the public know about some of the folks who work here who have served our country. Jim Baldoff is our controller, and he works in the finance department. He was an E5 Aviation second-class doorkeeper. I do not know what that is. U.S. Navy, served in Vietnam aboard the Naval Air at the Naval Air Station. Served during Vietnam at the Naval Air Station in the Philippines, but he also was on the USS Bonham Richard aircraft carrier. Bonham Richard, which is an aircraft carrier. I actually looked that up. That's a namesake of an old ship. It was a 3 or 4 mast ship that was in the Constitutional Army. Jay Rodney, our General Counsel, current rank of Colonel in U.S. Marine Corps. Jay served in Desert Storm, Somalia, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. John Sindorf, MD, a member of our medical staff, psychiatry. John served as hospital corpsman, 3rd class, U.S. Naval Reserve, served at the Naval Station in Pearl Harbor for 2 years. Nikki McBride, our manager of endoscopy and infusion, Lieutenant, U.S. Navy Nurse Corps. Kathy Breen, nurse, emergency department, and also one of our resource nurses, Lieutenant, U.S. Navy Nurse Corps, served at Bethesda Naval Hospital in Portsmouth, Naval Hospital Critical Care Unit, and she is a 3rd generation veteran. Mary Perriman, nurse, emergency department, petty officer, 2nd class, hospital corpsman, U.S. Navy, served Naval Regional Medical Center in Naples, Italy for 6 years. Bev Davidson, nurse, emergency department. She is a Major, Washington Air National Guard. And Gene Pollard, Marines. And Gene, I apologize because I printed the wrong dang sheet. And I have one that has your history. And would you tell us what you told me?
Very briefly.
I won't, but no, I had it all here, and I printed the wrong one.
That's okay.
Yeah, Marines.
Basically, 53 to 55 Marine Corps, 1 year in Korea. Then after that, the California Air National Guard in air operations. And then finally with U.S. Navy Reserve here in Seattle. I have a total of 31 years, and I retired as a commander.
That's fantastic. Cool. Thank you, and I apologize for printing
No
the
problem.
wrong sheet. Okay. And so now with that, is there anyone else in the room that has served military that? Okay.
Aaron did them.
All right. Now we'll have our pledge. Good to have our president with us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My deepest apologies to everyone. I'm sorry. The only thing I think is that I looked at the wrong agenda.
It's on both of them.
Well, I had others on the table. So, okay, now that we've done the flag salute, would you please go roll call?
President North?
Here.
Vice President Young?
Here.
Secretary Spikers?
Here.
Commissioner Herron?
Here.
And Commissioner Pollard?
Here.
Thank you.
Do I have A motion for approval of the agenda.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, the new business will be a presentation of the district budget for calendar year 2017.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go over the budget for 2017. This will be close to the same material we saw last week. And now that you've had time to think about it, obviously comments, questions, and we have some supplemental displays if you want to see, dive into some details on this. So our 2017 operating and capital budget. We do have some capital funds that we want to spend. As we've talked about, the spending of capital funds will be dependent upon positive operating results in 2017. Slide number 2, assumptions. What are the major assumptions for the budget? Volumes are consistent with what we're doing this year. In other words, we're not forecasting growth. We're being conservative. Two exceptions, which I'm going to ask Tom to do a few sentences on. One, a new provider in the Ridge Clinic, and then there will be a walk-in clinic in the hospital.
Thank you, Steve. The first one, which is a new provider in the Ridge Clinic, is really a replacement provider for Dr. Tricia Nielsen, who left this year. We're looking right now at the possibility of recruiting a physician who is board certified in both internal medicine and pediatrics, and we believe that would be a very good fit for the needs of the community, and would be the first time that we would have an internist in our clinic system, and so we're hopeful on that one. A walk-in clinic is designed to meet the needs of people who need to get into the clinic for a visit in short order. So not necessarily urgent care, but look at this as an open schedule clinic, so people can get in to see a doctor at a time more convenient to them. And the hours of operation will be later in the day than you typically see in the clinic. In terms of priority, the recruitment of the new provider at the Ridge Clinic is high priority for us, and then walk-in clinic would be something we do later as able to recruit.
The average daily inpatient census of 22. As we've talked about, right now we're very, what I call an inpatient-centric business model. Our financial results depend on inpatient census and the payer within the inpatient census. We've also got some payer mix assumptions of 17.25 Medicare, which is Medicare inpatient swing bed patients are where we make a bottom line, and we've talked about that. 3% salary increase. We sent out some information based on some questions that Commissioner Pollard had, and I hope you all read those, but I'll go over it again. The cost of that increase is just the increase we're getting, 3%, is $434,000. And we've been able to fund that with actually a decrease in salary because we've had some offsetting reductions based on our benchmarking program, which we'll talk about. As far as looking at salary increases, how much we're budgeting, what do we look at? We look at what's happening in the healthcare industry. We use a survey, and it's very common. It's used by most hospitals, Milliman Healthcare Survey. And In 2017, the respondents said they're giving an overall 3% increase. We find that we need to keep up with the market, or else we have difficulty attracting and retaining quality staff. And what happens when we do that is we have to incur additional expense because we use what we call agency or contract staff. They're much more expensive. If you look at the cost of an employed nurse versus the cost of an agency nurse in the same period of time, apples to apples, so salary and benefits for the employed nurse and the agency cost for an agency nurse, agency employees cost us 41% more than an employee. We need staff because we staff based on the staffing ratio on the inpatient side and based on volumes to service our patients. Couple of price indicators. We talked about the growth, the 3% growth in the healthcare salary. Healthcare is a booming industry. The consumer price index for this area, August numbers, the latest we have, shows a 2.1% price increase. So healthcare wages are rising quicker, at a faster rate than the overall consumer price index. Now, Social Security is only giving a 0.3% increase for 2017. But that's based on what really the price increase is, not in this area, but nationwide. The 2.1% is what is being the price increase in the Seattle area. We look at that. Those are some numbers.
Steve, that's all market basket, not just healthcare, right?
Right. The 2.1% is the market basket of goods that makes up the consumer price index. Expenses, bottom line, are flat. You'll see that. We have reductions in costs related to the benchmarking program that has been implemented and really with the backing of the Finance Committee. So a Finance Committee initiative, reductions in salary of $1.1 million. And then other expenses, we have budget inflationary increases. And it's not a flat 2.1%, it's inflation based on the type of product, really. I mean, pharmaceuticals are going up, I believe, 8%. So it varies by type of purchase we have. Any question? You can interrupt me with questions.
Yeah,
I have a question. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I've got a couple, and
Okay.
the salary increase, what part of the salary increase is the cost of living adjustment?
Tom, you want to?
We actually don't,
Yeah.
we don't parse it out, cost of living. What we do is we look at that market information. We know what we need to do across the board in order to stay competitive in the market. That's the 3%. Within that 3% increase, then, we tier it according to where people are in the range for their specific job description. So every single job description has a range, bottom to top, and we look at where each employee is, and employees who are in the lower part of the range, they get a little higher percentage increase to try to move them to the midpoint, which is really the market for that position. People who are over the midpoint get a lesser increase.
I totally get that. So what is the executive team's increases in salary? Do we know? Because I believe that they were to get cost of living adjustments, and so that's why I asked the question.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have everybody's what's called a compa ratio to be able to tell you what everybody's specific percentage is. Mine is exempted from that because it's your decision based on my contract. So, for example, Steve's a little lower than midpoint, so he's probably going to get some, I don't know, I'm guessing there, Steve, is somewhere around 2, and then Jay's probably similar, getting about 2. Dr. Woodcock is higher in the range, and she was probably going to get like a 0.5.
Okay, because for some reason in my head, I thought there was supposed to be automatic cost of living adjustment, so I didn't,
It's
okay.
all based on where people are in the range.
Okay, all right, well, that makes more.
First for Tom, and that is, I'm surprised. I thought that you are also built in your contract to get the same increase that the employees get. That's not true.
That's not true. My compensation is set specifically by contract by you.
And that holds until the
contract is renewed.
Renewed. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, one question I have. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Good idea. I'm always telling other people to do that, and I forget. Yeah. I'm a little puzzled about how we have here expenses flat, and then down below we have inflationary increases in expenses.
Yeah, let me explain that. It's what we have been able to fund the inflationary expenses and individual things we buy. We buy a new chair, that costs 2% more than last year. And we've been able to fund the salary increases. But the bottom line is the expenses will not increase because we have implemented the benchmarking reduction. So we've offset general market price increases with a reduction in our expenses. So what expenses are flat. If you look at the budget, you'll see that expenses are flat from what we anticipated in this year.
That means instead of buying the chair that's more expensive, you don't buy the chair. Is that correct? Is that how you do it?
If the chair breaks, we buy the chair.
Yeah.
Okay. But we've got offsetting decreases in other areas that will pay for that chair. So we're reducing expenses from benchmarking, just what we spend, by 1.1 million. We're using that to pay for salary increases, the new providers we talked about, and fund the inflationary increases we're seeing in supplies, vendor contracts and such.
So your expenses, you're including
All
including salaries.
expenses, the whole
Okay, so that's
thing.
what got
Yeah.
me
Yeah,
confused.
yeah.
So,
And the way we manage a budget is you've got, we approve a budget with a certain bottom line expense. At times, we have to reallocate money between the categories. So we have to spend more on repairs because we have an unexpected repair, but then we cut back on travel. So just an example
You make it work.
of how any organization that I've always involved with manages their expense budget. You say, well, I need that bottom line. I may have to spend more here and spend less here. Okay?
Washes.
And washing
it.
Sometimes it's hard to work with Washington.
Yeah, that's what we work for.
I think too,
That's just the way I would understand the way it is.
when we did the benchmarking, there was a change in staff and change in hours and things that would make a difference in how much money was going out. And that's probably one of the places, am I correct?
That's a big piece.
That's a big piece of the plan.
Yeah, that's where that 1.4, that 1.1 was because of the benchmarking. That's what they found out that they were going to be able to save. So that makes a big difference for the entity.
Madam President, I would like
Yes.
to discuss this issue about salary adjustments and cost of living increases, that package of 3% at some point. But I think I'd like to see the rest of the budget first, and maybe we can go back to that.
All right. On to slide 3. Look at the new program. So at the walk-in clinic, revenue projection of 252,000, expenses about 200 with startup costs of 6,000. The new provider in the Ridge, Revenue of $104,000, that one we're gonna ramp up, because a new provider, about 2 years is standard before they get to, we talked about in Finance Committee, the RVU production level, takes about 2 years. So you've got then about $300,000 in expense in the provider and an NA, and there's the startup costs. But that's built into the budget, so that's in the bottom line number you see. Inpatient mix, boy, this 7.75 Medicare, Medicaid 2.25, and the rest made up with private insurers and a little bit of government, Tri-Western's government. And how much census today is 24?
Today it's 24, will be 25 tomorrow.
Yeah. So, now, it'll go up and down, but you know, this mix is has one of the bigger effects on our profitability. Okay, so this is slide 5.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yes, Mr.
Back
Miller.
to the new programs. Isn't the Ridge Clinic a walk-in clinic?
No.
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 Is that only appointments?
Yes.
At the Ridge, correct.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I thought that it was also a walk-in clinic.
Thank you for the
And the
question.
new Ridge provider, is this the person that you just discussed?
Tom,
The
you want to talk about
new Ridge provider would be, we've been talking to a specific provider, and
Right.
hopes is that that person who is dual trained in internal medicine and pediatrics will be the new provider at the Ridge.
Is that an additional provider?
No, that's a replacement for a provider that we lost this year.
And that person is a replacement, but even though this person is a replacement, this person will draw additional revenue.
Additional revenue over what we've been running now.
Over what we've been running.
Yes,
This much, this 104. Correct.
for year 1.
Thank you.
Have we had somebody doing pediatrics prior to this?
Yes, we do have a pediatrician, but we know that there are so many kids on the Ridge, there's a huge opportunity here for more.
Is there any thought of a birthing operation in the hospital?
No, not at this time. Birthing operation is very similar when you think about surgery in terms of the amount of overhead and infrastructure required. So at this point, as you know, in our strategic planning, we did not put birthing center, nor did we put surgery on as a task for the coming next couple of years.
Thank you.
If you look, this is slide 5, down the bottom, under 2017 budget, the bottom line, that's what I call the bottom line, a profit of $276,000. So keep that number in your mind as we look at future slides, because I want to compare that to what our 5-year forecast is for the year. We've done a reforecast of this year, and our forecast, my forecast is we will lose about $1 million. The 5-year forecast, we'll look at that for this year, said we'd lose $644,000 in gap-based. Got to realize in that number we have depreciation and non-cash expense. So we're still producing cash, but the 5-year forecast shows us beginning to turn a profit on a bottom line, I call it GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, P&L, profit and loss statement level in 2018. And really, our implementing programs, we want to get back on track to meet that.
Just to note that Steve is referencing a 5-year forecast, and that's on the next.
It's on the next slide.
Yeah,
So
the next-
I'm just previewing it for you.
So the I.D. Bailey did say we were supposed to have a loss for this year, what,
Yes.
400,000?
No, 644,000.
644,000.
Yeah.
But that was based on what our volumes of what was that based on? I think it was based on more like 19 or 20.
It was 19 or 20, but it was higher ED volumes than we've seen, and
And a better payer mix.
a better payer mix. So, yeah.
loss and acting out.
I've got a slide that shows our bond covenants later on, and we'll talk about that. So at this point, if we make this forecast, the bond holders will not, as you say, lose patience, because we have met the bond covenants. And I'll show that in a minute, Gene. Okay? All right. One more item. Talk about 2017 budget variance to forecast. Our salaries are about $143,000 less next year than we're forecasting this year. Again, that's because the benchmarking and productivity work we've done. And I've got comments on individual expense categories coming up, so it's easier for me to read and give the right story. Okay, here's the Eid-Bailey forecast. And if you look, 2016, we have a budgeted loss of $644,000. So, yeah, we're projecting a loss of about 350 higher than that. So, it's actually fairly close with the $30 million expense rate. 2017, the loss is projected at $382,000. So this budget outperforms that projection.
About 600.
Yeah, about 600.
May I ask a question, Steve?
Sure.
Why would it outperform it next year as opposed to what we've done this year? What's the difference between the 2 years?
The difference is the productivity we implemented, and then mid-year we implemented the care management programs on the inpatient side that help us really manage the payer mix a lot more actively than we have. And Tom, you might want to say a few words on
I think
that.
that's right on. I think it's a combination of a new social work lead and the program that she has put in place, as well as the new intake criteria that we have been using for patients coming into the Sunday program. Both of those have positively affected the payer mix over the last 6 months.
And we've talked about long-term. We need to make a bottom line profit, because if you don't, you have really unfunded depreciation. You're using up your assets and not having money in the bank to pay for them when you have to replace them. So that's what we're doing.
I just want to make one more comment on payer mix, if I may, and that is that we do have in this budget 821 days budgeted for Medicaid. So we recognize that that's A, either going to happen, or B, is part of our commitment to the community, and we put that into this budget. 821 Medicaid days.
How does that compare with what we're doing now?
It's less than what we had in the current year, but that's, as I mentioned, the current year was much higher than any year we've had historically.
It's probably about the run rate we're getting right now. It's really close.
It's equal to an average daily census of 2.25 Medicaid patients.
And we're running about 2.
We're at 2 right now.
Yeah.
Here's what the Finance Committee hashed out for at least 3 months in a row on this, because I've been very suspect about that number for quite some time, because we were at as many as 5 Medicaid days, 6
Yep.
at one point, and as long as I can remember, we've never had more than maybe 3 to 4 ever in 10 years that I know of. And I had to look at this realistically, and the assurance at this point is my understanding is a couple of these folks are probably going to find good homes outside of the hospital, and we will always have some Medicaid people when their Medicare expires after a certain date, and that's fine. We are a critical access hospital. We have to provide for those people that run out of Medicare and end up on Medicaid. That is what the agreement is between a critical access hospital and the federal government.
To clarify one point, and that is I hear you saying that when they come in as Medicare and it expires, that we have some obligation to continue.
I think it's after, what, 120 days? They get, but it may not be 120 in our hospital. It could be.
So typically, a Medicare enrollee has 100 days of benefit. The first 20 days, there's no out-of-pocket. After the first 20 days, there's a 20% co-insurance. That said, so that's the dollars and cents of the benefit. The other thing that plays into this is that when they are in skilled status and accessing their skilled benefit under Medicare, they also enjoy resident rights.
Yeah,
resident.
Resident rights.
That means that the hospital is basically their home.
Mm-hmm.
And so them moving on is typically, and in nearly all cases, a voluntary event that they agree, I'm better off to go to another place, whether that's home, under home care, or just home under the care of a family member, or to a long-term care facility. Nearly all cases, patients move on to the better place for them long-term, but occasionally it's really difficult to find a place for them. We don't kick people out to the street. We encourage people to find a good place. Occasionally, as you know, we have some patients who are very reluctant to go, and it takes a lot of cajoling. And this year, we had 4 patients who have been with us for in excess of a year.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting, though. I just learned today, Opelec just discharged a patient who had been with them for 16 months in acute status. Anyway, these patients that are with us for a long period of time, they have required a lot of encouragement to move on, but I'm happy to say of those 4 patients that we had that were the long-termers, 3 of them have now voluntarily moved on to a better venue for them. And that's really, I got to credit our social work department's done a wonderful job with that. Now, if there is a patient who is still reluctant, there is a process that we can put in place where once we have identified a good, safe location for them, we work with DSHS to move them along. And there's definitely a more assertive approach for getting them to move along, but it is all with the approval of DSHS.
Sure.
How often do they get their care conference in order for them to continue to stay?
We have a weekly multidisciplinary care conference review on every patient in the hospital. For patients, in addition to that, patients who have been with us for a longer period of time have a daily visit from social work regarding their discharge plan.
So you have a daily care conference. Do you also have a 3-month, a monthly, and then an annual comprehensive care plan?
The care plan is established upon admission.
Okay.
And then every week, that care plan is reviewed by a multidisciplinary team. That's including the hospitalists, the nurses, the rehab specialists, pharmacy, social work, and infection prevention. They all review every patient's care plan every week, actually in this room. And then I said, in addition to that, the social workers meet individually with patients who are experiencing a longer than expected length of stay. And they'll meet with the patient daily.
Do you also include family members in this care conference?
Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, not in the care conference. I'm sorry, but this might be of interest to you. So the care conference occurs here, and then after the care conference, any patients who are participating particularly who have any specific challenges or issues, staff will then go and do a similar conference with family members and the patient. So it's a quasi-rounding that happens after this, but rounding doesn't occur with a full multidisciplinary team on every patient. But every patient is reviewed by that team every week.
Could I get back to my original question, which was, these people are moving from acute care into swing beds, or they're moving from Medicare into Medicaid. What about accepting patients that didn't come through the Medicare route rather? They come as Medicaid patients to start with.
Yes.
Do we have any of those? Do we accept those?
We have in the past, and what we do is we take I'm going to hold that thought. We have in the past, and we take a look at how many Medicaid days we've had, and if we're way over budget on Medicaid days, we will not take de novo Medicaid patient, but we do take them when we are on budget with respect to our Medicaid days. I've approved those in the past, but we just had so many this year that we couldn't take de novo Medicaid patients. I want to go back to just one thing that you said, Commissioner Pollard, and that is patients who are moving from acute to swing. Very few of our patients are moving from acute to swing. That pathway typically here looks like this. They come into the emergency department, they're admitted as an acute care patient, they're here with us in acute status for 3 midnights. That's a requirement in order to qualify for the Medicare benefit under skilled care, and then they, quote, swing, and then they become a swing bed patient. Most of our patients admit to us as a swing bed patient, having completed their acute phase at another hospital and being transferred here.
But when they go into swing bed, they're still under Medicare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just accessing a different benefit.
So just a comment to make sure that everybody understands is when we have Medicare at 99% and Medicaid at, what, 5%? Or whatever it is. It's very low. And then we've got our commercials at about at 9%, just under 9%. We don't have any kind of buffer.
No.
We just don't.
Yeah.
And,
David, I appreciate that, but what look at it from a compassionate standpoint, which is, I don't want any of these people to be on the street when they should be cared for. Now, I don't know where they're going to get their care if we can't provide it, if there are financial reasons we can't accept them. I'm worried about the end product. Are they going to be on the street? Are we going to find a compassionate solution for them, even if it means we lose money? That's my concern.
I think that's what the social work and Tom have been working at for the last 6 months.
I know they tried to do that, but can they achieve that?
So far, they've been successful.
3 out of 4.
Yeah, so far they've been successful.
All of those patients who have been with us a long time have found very successful discharges. In fact, I know there's the one we paid the most particular attention to, and this patient has now reported that she's happier than she ever has been. Now, I'm sorry I said she, but...
Could you characterize these superior outplacements that you're mentioning? I mean, is this going home?
No.
Essentially?
Excuse me. I would like to go forward on the budget, if we could, please. That's a little bit off the budget idea, and we really need to get through the budget. Commissioner Pollard, please. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yes.
All right, we move on.
Comments on expenses, this is slide 7. Okay, salaries are, again, 1% in 2017 below our 2016 forecast. Includes a 3% salary increases, some new programs that are offset by the benchmarking reductions. That's how you get that. Okay. Benefits, 9% increase. It includes a 13% increase in our health insurance costs. Primera is costing us more. That's who our health insurance provider is. we shopped it out, and we saw increases of 20 to 40%. So never looked pretty good after that. And it's hit the papers how health insurance costs are going up.
By 3 digits.
By 3 digits. A lot of people are, who knows, if I knew the answer, I'd be smarter than I am. Professional fees are actually decreasing by 17%. Lower agency RN, the therapist costs. We talked about that, how it's way more expensive to have an agency employee, an agency person in. Supplies. Show a slide on the supply expense, but we've incorporated the cost increase estimates from suppliers. Repairs and maintenance is going down. Big part of that is we have a maintenance contract with the mechanical contractor on this facility, outfit named Hermanson, that will go away in February. We signed that contract so our staff, the internal staff, could learn the ins and outs of doing the repairs and maintenance on this place, and that's worked out. I have up to February, and that goes away. That's about almost $50,000 a year, and that will go away. Let's see, utilities, pretty even. Purchase services has gone up, will go up next year. We outsourced the management of our cafeteria, the dietary department, mid-year, so we're picking a full year of that up next year. We only half a year this year. We also reclassed some of the public information collateral into purchase services, and we purchased a couple of tools for our revenue cycle department, insurance verification, and a couple of programs, and that's led to a huge increase, or huge improvement in our accounts receivable days. They're down to 48 days last month. I never thought I'd see it that low. And it wasn't me, it was our revenue cycle director, I promise. Lease and rentals have gone down. Bed rentals, been able to reduce that through management, and then the admin office lease goes away. Advertising going down, $57,092. We refocused the program. And really, Tom said if we want to do it, makes sense. And other expenses are up by $42,000 because we budget for a recruiter, which we very rarely use, and I put the recruiter in the budget this year in case we have to use one. So that explains the variances we've seen on the expense side.
One thing I want to make a comment on other expenses, and I spoke briefly with Tom and Steve prior to separately, and I think this can be done.
Yeah, it can.
Is to move $75,000 out of that other expenses and put that in a contingency separate line item that can be used for things that come up. Like, for instance, I saw some things that were being paid, settled from 2014, not abnormal, but it just happens that things come up later than what you anticipate, and then you go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh yeah, that's right, we got to do. So I also, part of that might be a portion that may need to be paid to a consultant on affiliation too, even though we have some already built into the budget. We didn't really want to disclose that we would have $100,000 available so that we could see if we can get somebody for 50. So since I'm saying this as a matter of public record, but I don't think anybody's going to actually obtain the tape and find this out.
Not at least until the RFP process is done.
Yeah, we'll keep it known for a while.
David, I'm sorry, are you talking about the contractor or looking for M&A? Is that what you're talking about?
Affiliation.
Yeah.
So
And $100,000 available, but we don't want anybody to know, but that we have like a $50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
got it.
Okay.
So-
yeah.
You're all sworn to
So
secrecy in this
it's,
room.
it's a
Cancel that part of the tape.
So it's a strategic, and then there's an additional 25,000 in this line item that I think we should put away for things that do come up, and they do. It's notorious, I mean, it's.
That's what happens.
So, and I don't want, until, I do want to make a comment on capital expenditures. There will be none until we show profit.
So with all that,
So-
the other expense numbers remain the same, or?
They do remain the same, but as a
So all of
line,
it-
subcategory of contingency
There's
line.
an addition here, what we have right now. Okay.
So nothing changed, but I want to put that
just
into
want-
kind of like don't touch kind of
Yeah, yeah.
spot.
Okay.
And then,
The hands-off account.
yes.
You
And so,
mentioned something about going back to Ivy Bailey and having them do some additional work. Where does that show up?
that should be under other expenses that we've already budgeted. And we looked at an additional 5,000 or 10,000, depending. And of course, that would have to come before the board. So, we don't even know if we're going to approve it or not, so.
Was that 75,000 allocated to go where again, Dave?
Let's pretend if you look at other expenses at 701,000,
Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
take 75,000
Out of
from
that,
that
okay.
and put it on the next line as a,
Well,
just if you.
Actually, just accounting-wise, it will occupy a place called a sub-account under other.
Sub-account,
Yeah,
under-
It'll be a sub-account called contingency.
Contingency.
There you go. And so that's, I do want to set that,
Yeah,
because
well-
I know we're going to need it, but I
Okay.
want it for that purpose and not for some other purposes.
But at 6%, that is it. You're
That's-
not going to increase it.
That's
or-
part of
No,
that
no.
reallocating funds.
Okay, just wanted to make
The
sure.
budget remains the same.
Okay.
Bottom
The
line is
bottom
the
line
same.
budget remains the same.
This display won't change, but if you look at the sub-accounts, you'll see
All
it
right.
will change. Okay.
And I think too, you have to give David credit because he's really looked at this very detailed. He's gone to the staff and he said, you need to cut this, we need to get this down. He really wants a balanced budget, if at all possible. So there's some things here that are a little more extreme or like hidden in other for those reasons.
Yeah.
So that we have an emergency fund.
Yeah, I saw when we originally did the budget over $500,000, and I said, I've seen that before. It's really, in my eyes, I don't know if it's really realistic. I'd rather be more realistic, and 275,000. If we make 275,000, we'll all be very happy because that's 650,000 more than what Heidi Bailey
Yeah, what the 5-year goal is.
estimated it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to be more realistic, transparent, and honest about the budget. So we worked that out, and I think, looking at this, it's probably the most honest budget that we could potentially come up with. So, and I say that sincerely. I don't want it snapping back in our faces.
Commissioner Pollard?
I have a question, Steve, on advertising.
Uh-huh.
My recollection was that we budgeted $200,000 for advertising in 2016.
We're only going to spend, this is our forecast, this is our budget, and we're only going to spend 92.
92.
So,
Is that true that we budgeted 200,000?
Gene, I
And also, I recall that there was some kind of splitting of the expenses of that department. Some of it went into advertising, some went somewhere else. What is the total
you want to talk
cost?
about Tom?
Yeah, so as I went through everything we were spending in the advertising department, I saw that there's the marketing department. So let's make sure we got our categories straight. There's a marketing department, and in that department, there are labor costs, there are supply costs, there are advertising costs, and that's when you place an advertisement, for example, an ad in the newspaper. In the advertising cost, it was categorized as advertising, and that is the production production of the quarterly newsletter, community newsletter. All the production, all the printing, that was all listed as advertising. That is production, that's not advertising. And so $12,000 were taken from advertising and put into purchase services. In my mind, that was a better characterizing of that cost. In addition to that, I pulled $22,000 specifically out of advertising. So it's really playing out as fewer costs in newspaper advertising, and some of that is actually allocated in beefing up and improving our online presence. But total advertising cost is down by $22,000.
Thank you.
Just supply increases. You can see pharmaceuticals 8%. The rest is pretty close to inflation. What's happening in the pharmaceutical industry is the large pharmaceutical companies are buying up the generic manufacturers and raising the price. Thank you very much.
Yeah, really.
Yes. Bond governance. Gene, you asked about that. For first cover we have is debt service coverage. And that's right here. And what that says is we need, our coverage ratio requirement is 1.2. And 2016 forecast shows it 1.31. And the 2017 budget shows it at 1.71. So we exceed that in both accounts. That's the one that probably keeps me awake at night the most.
So that's the one that triggers the guy that comes in and reviews our records.
Right.
And so it hasn't been triggered.
We don't think it was triggered last year because of that problem with the
Right.
trust indenture.
The trust indenture.
We do not think it will be triggered this year, but we haven't finished the year yet. We need a strong fourth quarter for that to happen. So that's where we are.
Is there a judgment factor in the triggering, or is it strictly numbers?
Strictly numbers. Strictly numbers. Strictly numbers. Reserve requirement we have with U.S. Bank, our trustee, we have $3.675 million in the bank. We'll continue to have that in the bank in a reserve account. And
Just to note, Steve, that reserve account is specific for bond service.
right, it's what it is the revenue bond debt service for the highest year of debt service over the life of the bonds. And that happens in 2034. And then liquidity requirements, days cash on hand. That's defined as how many days worth of expenses do you have in unrestricted cash in the bank. And forecast is 85. The requirement is 30. And forecast budget next year is 132. So that's not an issue. Capital budget. We talked about that. We talked about that the last time. Jump to kind of the bottom. That no spending will be authorized on capital expenses until we get board approval. Okay, so you have oversight over that, and we want you to have oversight over that.
So would that mean that it would probably be a good idea for all of us to keep this last page so that when you come to us, we know where we're supposed to be and what's going on?
And if we say we're going to spend something not on this list, you're going to say, what are you going to give up? And the second part of the conversation is, okay, we recommend that no spending be authorized until we have a positive net income. That's not the cash, that's the gap. We're talking about the gap bottom line.
Well,
The exception was...
Steve, could you clarify that? How much is that?
what is the gap that we would have?
No, I'm sorry, GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles. So
Oh,
we-
sorry.
I'm sorry, if you look at the income statement and we're making money, and we have a consistent trend of making money, we'll spend some capital. The exception to that would be, and I'll tell you, if something critical to our operations needs to be replaced. Usually that, I hate to tell you, usually that comes in the IT area. A server breaks, server goes down, piece of hardware that protects us from phishing and such, but don't anticipate it, but we might have to come to you on that.
Question on the van. Would it pay to lease that rather than purchase, number one? Number two is, could we lease it perhaps and get a sponsor with their advertising on it, as, you know, this van is being provided by chaplains, or something like that, and somehow get that paid for, the lease payments or something of that sort?
Question one, it might pay to lease it. If you had money in the bank, you'd look at it and say, okay, what's the interest rate on the lease? If the interest rate is higher than our cost of capital, it doesn't make sense, so we do that analysis. Question two was, when someone donated, was that?
Get a sponsor. We'll have, you know, it'll say Snoqualmie Valley Hospital on it, but it might also say in small print there, you know, sponsored by Chaplains BW or something.
No harm in asking.
No harm in asking. No harm in asking.
Okay.
And then
What's the life, excuse me,
Yes.
what's the life expectancy of many of this equipment? I'm just curious.
Sure, it varies.
it depends.
Yeah.
Varies.
Basketball is on it, okay.
Yeah, and most of this has, I'm guessing this. Yeah.
It's going to be all.
It's all over the board.
We actually have a whole book
Yeah.
that we reference that helps us know what the expected life is, because that helps us set up the depreciation schedule on capital equipment. And it's different.
It's the American Hospital Association book entitled Useful Life of Capital Assets for Hospitals. And that's what we use. That's what we use to really time our purchases and set depreciable life on the assets. One item here.
Just a side note.
Yes.
I have a freezer that's 42 years old and still running. So you never know. If you take good care of it.
We're going to call you.
Are this something that we are anticipating to purchase next year? Is that what it is?
This was
I'm just curious.
capital budget.
And we don't have it yet?
Right.
Okay, I'm just, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe, because we are a brand new hospital, come we're buying so many. That's why I asked about the life expectancy. I thought we have it, and then we have to buy a new one again.
Now,
We might.
how much of this equipment that you've got on here is equipment that came from the old facility, or is this all, that might help us? Is it all brand new, or is this old stuff that we transferred from the old hospital?
So that, let me check in on that. Contemplates another question, that is, how much of this is replacement capital
Yeah,
versus
that's what, yeah,
all these
replacement
new
versus,
items?
yeah, okay.
And as I look through the list, there are very few replacement items. The van is a replacement item, but these others provide additional capabilities. So if you look at the IT,
Yeah.
our need for storage just grows every single year. We just always are needing more storage. Force scrubber is just a new capability for the housekeeping department. The fiber project is jumping onto a project that's being driven really by the city. And that has, but the beauty of that project is it greatly reduces our IT costs. So,
What is a fiber?
so the fiber is a fiber optic line.
Fiber optic.
Fiber optic line that's going to be run right down the parkway. If we can tie into that line, we get super fast internet capability plus a much lower cost of internet connectivity. And it has about a 5-year positive return on investment.
You say if.
No?
You said if we can tie it.
If, And the only if is if you decide to spend the money.
The if is spending the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a couple pieces of clinical equipment, and that's just the nature of the business that we're in. There's always an advancement clinically that we look to keep up with. The freezer, sorry to go through this, but I'm started and I can't stop now. The freezer is actually another return on investment opportunity for us. What it does is it will be a large walk-in freezer out here on the loading, just past the loading dock. It allows us to buy food in much larger bulk quantities, and that has about a 2-year payback on it. Meal carts just helps us deliver our food with better temperatures because we don't have insulated carts today. Pagers system, more work to be done on the pager system. I'm not going to go into that. Bladder scanners and other clinical capabilities. So,
Wait, a question. Out of all these things listed, which ones relate to patient safety,
All of them.
if any?
Probably patient care, patient safety,
Well,
patient care. Pagers would be called
I
like.
can tell you that if our, you can draw that line on a lot of these. So, for example, the IT systems, if our IT infrastructure doesn't keep up, and if we can't run our electronic.
That's sort of indirect.
Yeah.
What about direct patient safety?
That's
Direct
actually very
patient
safety.
safety.
All right.
It's a requirement, actually.
Yeah. The video laryngoscope, the vascular ultrasound
those are-
guide here, tonometer, and the bladder scanner.
Yep.
Those are all issues related to direct patient care.
All right, and as far as patient safety, though, to narrow it just a little more, is there any item on here that relates to patient safety, narrowly defined?
Your lights. The call light, pager light.
The pager lights, the floor scrubber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too, Gene, Commissioner Pollard, I would say anything that helps healthcare be better, like the ultrasound.
Yeah, sure.
And those things, that is a safety issue.
No question,
That's-
but usually there's something that is more critical from a safety standpoint. That's just what I was asking.
Have we thought about,
As a nurse, maybe you could comment on that.
I can comment on this, and that is, the video laryngoscope, in my mind, is the number one item on this list. And the reason for that is it provides the emergency department staff with a better tool for opening an airway.
Yep.
And there's, there are some, for example, the vascular ultrasound, that helps with starting an IV. We have staff who are pretty good at it. Occasionally we get a miss. That helps you so you don't get a miss in starting an IV. But in terms of patient safety and survivability, the video laryngoscope, in my mind, is top of the list.
Could I respond? I'd like to mention that today I was on the computer and I was looking at what a foundation, I think it was Evergreen Foundation, there could have been Kittitas, but at any rate, their foundation is out buying this kind of equipment. Could we maybe move that, the brick cell money that we're considering and even stimulate the foundation to take on one of these projects?
That's exactly my point. And that topic is coming to the facilities committee for discussion. It's because I want to know the committee's opinion on that question. It's also a topic that I have for my meeting next week with our foundation chair. Thank you, Jim.
so what about thinking about outsourcing this floor care? Most places have an outsource and you take bids and they come in and they do the floors.
Housekeeping outsource question.
Yeah.
And we've asked that from time to time. Yes.
So I mean, and rather than thinking about buying a $7,000 floor scrubber.
That's an interesting question. Could we check with the city and the schools to see if they're using contractors?
No, the schools use their own.
Okay, how about the city of Snoqualmie, city of North Bend? Now, let's see what they're doing.
Steve and I are already working on that question.
Even the post office, they contract. Yeah.
There are firms out there that do this very well for hospitals. It's a very specific skill set to do housekeeping in a hospital. So I would seek those comparisons. I'd ask, actually, look at companies who do this for hospitals, and Steve and I have been actually working on that question.
Hospitals are a much different entity as far as germs go.
It's all about infection.
Yeah,
control.
it is.
Thank you.
Are there any
Last
other-
question.
Okay.
This 320,000 total, is that in the budget sitting there until whether we approve it or not? Is that in the budget, this 320,000?
Yeah, this is the budget. That's
No.
not, that's, David, these are capital expenses.
And there's a capital line?
There is a capital line in here, okay?
No. So capital comes out of your cash.
Right.
And it shows up in subsequent years on your depreciation.
But it's not a line in your profit and loss statement because you spend it and it comes out of cash. It doesn't come out of your profit and loss statement.
Until the following year. when it
The
comes
following
out,
year, then you
it
pick up
shows up on
depreciation.
depreciation.
So, the answer is yes, but it's kind of it's how you treat capital assets in any organization.
Well, accounting-wise, I understand that,
Okay.
but for the people trying to figure out the budget, and it's not in there until we pull it out of cash from our savings that we set aside, that's an issue. So it's not in a budget. It's not, my mind, it's not provided for.
David, if I spend $320,000 in capital tomorrow, it will not affect the budget because it's not showing up on the operating budget because it's not an operating expense.
Will it not show up in,
So you're saying this is totally separate?
It's totally separate. It's a capital budget. It's not an operating budget.
so,
We produce enough cash to cover it.
So this is capital that would come out of our cash line.
Comes out of cash, comes out of cash reserves and the cash we will produce in the operating budget.
Okay.
sounds like we need to make 320,000
No, David, you
to
don't.
be able to pay for these expenses.
David, if you take the bottom line of 270,000, add another 3 million in depreciation, that's how much cash we're going to produce. Over $3 million. That will come out of that cash we produce. So the answer is yes, it is in the budget. Because we're producing enough cash to fund this with that budget.
It just doesn't make sense, I guess, if you're taking out of depreciated money that's supposed to be set aside for a future, when we decide to do with this cash in 15 years when we are not getting reimbursed by or whatever. And to me, it's not the way to be looking at it. It's not.
Well, David, it's how every business from United Airlines to Boeing to True Value Hardware looks at capital expenses, looks at operating expenses.
So the budget is for operating expenses, correct?
Correct? And the budget produces, let me go back just a second. Budget produces.
Is that page 5, 2017 budget?
Fund covenant, no.
So the budget produces $3.5 million in cash. $3,240,000 depreciation. Add in 276, so the budget produces $3.5 million in cash.
So the capital
And
project,
we're saying we have capital requests, potentially $340,000 out of $3.5 million in cash we produce.
I thought I would.
The 5-year forecast has us spending money to replace capital, because any business has to replace capital and add to capital.
I understand, but this is what my idea was when I was very, very clear about this, is the cash that we produce is going to be set aside at some point, when we're no longer being reimbursed very well from critical access, or critical access goes away, we have the option, and we, at some point, decide whether we pay off our bond debt or we do something else with it, not spend it now. So that's a problem I see with this capital potential here, and I don't like the 320,000 not being actual potential operating numbers. So to me, it's a fancy way to dance around the reality here, and I don't like it.
Okay. Can I respond to your question, or are you going to listen to me, sir?
I'm listening, but I don't like your accounting fancy dancy accounting.
It's not, this is standard accounting.
Standard accounting. When we come to you with a capital request, we will come to you with a long-term cash projection. It says, here is how it's going to affect our long-term cash buildup. You will see that. We're not going to spend it without your approval. We've already said that. You will be sick and tired of the analysis we do, because we will overanalyze this and bring it to you. That is my commitment to you as your CFO. Now, if you have items that wear out and you don't replace them, you ain't got no hospital, Jack. And if you don't want a hospital, start selling it off now.
Well, then you need to make more money on a cushion, because unless it's got an ROA, I'm not going to be wanting to approve any capital expenditure.
Okay, let me
Nope.
offer a thought.
Gee, I never picked that up.
You know, if you don't have a freezer for food, you can't feed anybody. If you do not have a good bladder scanner, then you cannot, that limits the amount of treatment.
I understand that, but that needs to be in the budget as saying we are going to spend this and we have to make more money to cover this. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, well, I think
What I'm telling you is, well, we will show you, we're not asking for it now.
I understand.
This is what we will potentially come back to you with. We're going to have to make money, have to prove we're making the cash to cover this, and we have a long-term build-up. I don't mean to argue with you, David. I just want to say, we're not going to spend it.
Spiker's asking for is just what Steve is saying, and that is that we show you how we make those long-term cash requirements while we're operating a hospital that has capital requirements along the way.
So there's enough money to cover those.
We will show you there is, and we'll do a long-term projection.
Right. We're not going to come to you. We totally agree with the concern here, and that is that we do not want to spend our cash and bleed down our cash to the point where we're not able to be viable when the tables turn, 15 years from now.
Yeah, and
I agree with that.
I know you agree with it,
I'm
but
not arguing with you.
unless, like I said, unless we have cash that we make operating-wise to pay for these capital expenditures this year, I'm not going to agree to anything unless I see a really quick ROI on it.
Didn't we say in the capital budget that we will not spend till we come to the board?
Oh, I know. I'm just letting you know now, because you can let the department heads know right now that I'm not going to be recommending any kind of spending unless we're in the black. We've got to be in the black for 6 consecutive months.
Yes,
It would have clarified things a little bit for me if this had been called, I know this sounds picky, but not 2017 operating and capital budgets.
Okay.
Because the way it's written seems like it's all combined and the capital is part of the operating budget.
yeah, and that's my concern too.
So just technical, but that's the way I could have understood it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that I support the stringent look that the Finance Committee is going to give any capital expenditures. Jared Norris made a very good point. Look, if you don't have a freezer, you can't feed the people. Wait, no. We're going to improve our freezer capacity so we can buy in larger amounts. That may not be critical,
I agree.
So, you know, we have to say what would we like to have, what we must have.
I wasn't as concerned about the
Just an
freezer as
example.
maybe, as maybe a bladder scanner or something like that. And yeah, I think they need to show that there's a real need at the
Not
same
just
time.
a like.
Or a
Yeah.
want, yes.
Crucial need, not real.
Okay.
Crucial,
Okay.
with an ROI.
Is there any other discussion? Joan, you haven't said anything. Do you have any questions about the budget that you can
I
ask?
don't have any questions, and I've got to say the capital budget, we have in the past had things come up emergently that we didn't have any plan to pay for and any idea. There were things that needed to happen, and we spent money that we didn't have. So I think this capital budget is a really good idea, because there's a lot of equipment that changes, not only depreciates, but it changes, and there's no telling when those things are going to happen. It's kind of like the Medicare reimbursements and all that. We didn't have an idea. We didn't know that drug companies were going to buy the generics and make all of us pay a lot more for medicine. This is not covered by insurance.
Is there anything else on this budget that you need to inform the board of?
Not that I have.
Okay.
So if let me just ask again. So this equipment are all replacement equipment? They're not, they're not.
No, the vast majority is non-replacement.
Non-replacement.
It either has a return on
So-
investment or has a new clinical capability.
Okay, so right now we don't have any of them. How about
That is-
the
that is correct.
operating
We do not
one?
have any of these
So how
equipments,
about-
except, with the exception of a van. We do have a van. This would replace a van.
So we're not able to provide service in any of some of this because we don't have vascular ultrasound. We don't have any of this.
Vascular ultrasound is a technology that aids clinical staff in starting IV, and the video laryngoscope is an item that helps staff create an open airway.
Okay, and right now we don't have them?
Right now, we have laryngoscopes, but they're not video laryngoscopes.
The other thing that is very important is a bladder scanner. Having had to try and guess how much urine was in somebody's bladder
We don't have
is
that
not
either.
fun.
However, doctors and nurses have been doing it that way, doing it without that stuff. It causes less, if you can get better equipment, it means less injuries, less liability, better health care is really what it means, if you know how to use them. But people have, I've done a lot of IVs and I didn't have anything to check them with. Yes, Commissioner Pollard?
Steve is finished, as I understand, with his presentation, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that has been concerning me is something that happened between the time this budget was put together and today, which is an election. And we have a situation where the president-elect is swearing that on the very first day he's going to destroy Obamacare.
Not destroy, repeal.
Well, just a moment. Let me make some shortcuts to what I'm trying to say. That he's going to eliminate Obamacare totally. And so I guess one question before I make my statement and ask another question is, what do you foresee, if you can foresee anything, regarding how the elimination of the Obamacare and moving to Trump care will affect us? What I have read is it could have a massive effect on hospitals and patients.
Yeah, I have been doing a lot of reading in the last 24 hours. A lot of concern in the industry expressed. I'll just say the bottom line as of today is no one really knows. That said, I had a very good conference call this morning with Bishop, and what it sounds like is that a repeal of Obamacare is not likely. You've got to remember that 21 million people have been put on insurance plans because of Obamacare. Those people are, to a large constituents who put Trump into office. But he has promised to repeal it. It may be difficult to repeal, but what is more likely to happen is through administrative actions, and most particularly the budget reconciliation process. There will be tweaking of certain provisions within the Affordable Care Act that could essentially really gut the act. Now, what is the impact on us specifically? And I think it's important for us to go back and understand what did the ACA do to us or for us. The biggest impact the ACA had on us was it provided people in the community with insurance who did not previously have insurance. We saw the impact almost exclusively in the emergency department, where patients who were previously coming in who had no insurance were now coming in on one of the Affordable Care Act plans, or they're on Medicaid. And so those plans have, compared to other commercial plans, a relatively low payment. And so what we saw was a shift in our contractual adjustments from charity care to commercial or Medicaid adjustments. So it really was just going from one bucket to another in terms of the contractual adjustments. Didn't have a huge impact on us, with the exception of that categorization. I think that there are other health systems and hospitals who are more at risk than we are, because they just have a larger number of patients who are going to be not enjoying the kind of insurance that they have today for that acute care.
Did it allow, however, patients to choose to go, say, to the Ridge Clinic instead of to the ER? Because without the insurance, the only place they could go maybe was the ER.
I'm sure there was some of that, but the Ridge Clinic is really more populated by people who have commercial insurance.
Okay.
There's definitely more to come on this.
Yeah. The other thing I'm concerned about is the 3% salary increase across the board. Now, I know that healthcare salaries are higher than some other salaries, but when we do an across-the-board increase, we're covering everybody: kitchen helpers, landscape people, and this idea of giving everybody the same increase is not necessarily meeting market. For example, what I have read is there is no RN shortage really in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and that Washington is the most preferred state for RNs to work in. If there is a need, however, for a certain category of employees, let's say caregivers, RNs and LPNs and so forth, then we should maybe focus on those, but not necessarily give an across-the-board increase whereby an executive might get $8,000 increase and so forth. Now, last year, what the feds did is they said, we're going to do a cost of living increase, and we're going to do some salary adjustments, but we're going to keep them separate. We're going to deal with them separately. The feds got 0% cost of living increase last year. Social Security, 0 cost of living increase last year. We gave our people 1.7% increase, which I think was over generous. It was at least generous. And so I think this way that we've done it this year, or that is being presented to us, where the COLA is linked in with adjustment of salaries to meet market conditions, it confuses things. And very frankly, I think in our present financial situation, and with all the unknowables out there, with changes to Obamacare and the entire health industry and insurance industry, frankly, I think we should bite the bullet and have a moratorium on any salary increase this year, and certainly anything more than what Social Security giving, which is 0.3. So that's my position. I think we should have a moratorium.
I think David has just asked that we have a moratorium on capital expenditures, and that was going to be my other point. I think we should have a moratorium on capital expenditures and a moratorium on salary increases, and let that be a public service that we could offer at this time. I just think that it would be foolhardy for us to come up with a 3% salary increase when our financial future is so shaky.
May I ask a question real quick? Do you know what the COLA is, Steve, that generally is being used for this year? You know what everybody kind of what
State,
3% in healthcare, you talked about.
COLA is 2% in healthcare?
for state employees?
I do not know what non-healthcare state employees are getting.
Or any other profession?
No.
Okay.
No.
Federal employees are getting.
Pardon me?
Are you talking about private and public employees?
Healthcare employees, private, public hospital districts, 501c3s, aren't many for-profits, so mostly
Not
501c3s.
There are a handful.
There are a handful.
Just a few for-profits, most are
I-
501c3.
I think Gene has a point. I mean, we're projected to lose over $1 million, which is, 400,000 more than we anticipated, maybe even more. I don't know. Originally I was thinking, 3%, we're going to be probably putting some people to work more. That's my guess. That's the only way we can reduce by 1.1 million. You're basically making things more efficient. And when you make things more efficient, some people get disgruntled. We've actually lost some folks.
It's called Survivor.
Yeah. And the other thing is when I was actually talking to some of the folks on the Ridge clinics, the MAs are hard to keep there. They keep going to Swedish. They get paid more. But on the other hand, when they go over there, the only job they get is they do one job, emptying bed pans all day long, but they get paid an extra $2 an hour. It's kind of a, catch-21. But I guess I am concerned because we're losing a whole bunch more, 1.5 million right now, and hopefully we'll be somewhere around 1 million. But if that isn't the case, if it goes anywhere over that, then we're way over budget, and that's a problem. So.
Could I?
Commissioner Pollard, let me ask somebody else if they
Sure.
have any comments. Commissioner Herring, Commissioner Young, do either of you
I
have any
have-
comments?
Maybe it's because I'm biased because I am a registered nurse and I have family that are nurses and also in the healthcare profession. And I do not believe that the salary increase should be taken away because if I were still working, I'd be making $40 an hour because of SEIU. And we're going to lose employees.
Commissioner Herring, do you have anything to say or add? Any
I
comments?
think salary increase should match performance and position, should not be a blanket 3% for everybody. Those that are underperforming I would like to see a moratorium for now, but it depends. I'm gonna have to,
Well,
because of our long-term debt, I think we need to look really, we
I
can't
do-
stretch too much.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Sorry,
cut
go
you
ahead.
off. No.
It's okay.
I do know that mostly in municipals, in cities, and any large organization, they do a flat-out COLA for everybody. They all get the same cost of living raise, and I'm not sure what the cost of living raise is, but it just, all staff get that. So I'm not sure how we are any different. I'm going to let Tom address this, and then I'd like to ask for a motion.
I would like to continue the discussion.
Commissioner Pollard, I'm going to let Tom make a comment first, and then we will move on.
For fear of sounding like a broken record, I'm going to come back to why it is 3%. We didn't make up 3%. We used survey data for healthcare in the Pacific Northwest. So this is the Milliman data surveys where salaries are going in the Pacific Northwest. It is 3%. We did an analysis to understand if we don't do that, what is the premium that we could pay? Now, it's not in every area, but it's a premium that we would be paying in nursing and in rehab, two of our largest employee groups when it comes to use of agency staff. Keep in mind, the 3% is, by the way, we do not have a pay-for-performance program here. We are just trying to keep up with market. We're just trying to stay competitive. Offer wages that do two things: keep people here and attract people when there are open positions. That's all we're trying to achieve here. And based on where the market is going, we're recommending the 3% increase. What it is an average increase. It's a 3% increase in wages for the organization, and I'll come back again to how it's allocated. But the 3% keeps us up with market so that we can recruit and we can retain. If we fail to recruit and retain, and we bring in agency staff because we can't fill those positions, it comes with a 41% premium. And then I'll just comment on how we allocate the 3% again. And that is every employee occupies some place in the range for their position. And if they are below the midpoint, they get a larger increase than if they are above the midpoint. Because those who are above the midpoint are above the average for that position in the market. So we don't give very big increases for those above the midpoint.
Madam President, I just point out that the difference between the projected 644 loss that we discussed with I.D. Bailey and the $1 million loss is almost exactly the $460,000 for the salary increase. And so a one-year moratorium, given the fact that our employees got a 1.7% increase last year when neither Social Security or the federal government did, I think that that's reasonable to ask the employees to buy in to our struggle here to balance our budget and to become viable as a hospital. And so therefore, I am going to take the position that we should do a one-year moratorium on any salary increase. Now, I'd be willing to go with what Social Security and the federal government are giving, which is 0.3, or I'd even go to 0.5, or if we're going to differentiate and look at where we're having difficulty retaining employees and so forth, like they do at Overlake Hospital with their union. Not everybody gets the same increase at Overlake. The union comes up and says, we want this, and so that's the category of employees that get a certain increase. At any rate, I am in favor of a one-year moratorium on both capital and wage increases until we get our act together and know what the President-elect and the new Congress are going to do with health care.
Are you making a motion, Commissioner Pollard?
I'm explaining my intention to vote against anything other than that. So
I've got one last comment. I think maybe, I'm taking your comments as being mostly right on, but I think what you need to do, Tom, is to look at the employees that are having a hard time, they're leaving, take and increase their wages to a point, and then the employees that are not going to be leaving, and they probably won't, I think that you're going to have to work with that. And I think we should reduce the percentage down to 2%, and you can work with that to increase the employees' wages. The ones that we're worried about leaving, increase that to the appropriate level.
Commissioner
You know, the
Harris?
midpoints and all of that, I'd throw that out. I would be looking at
Yeah.
who's going to be leaving, and let's get them, let's keep them.
That sounds more reasonable to
So-
me, because we don't really want mass exodus here, and we're gonna cease to exist. if We don't look into the different options.
May I comment?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
And that is that the method of giving higher wages for those who are lower in their range actually speaks to your point exactly, David, and that is those are the employees that were at most risk of losing. So if the decision of the commission is a 2% increase, we'll be allocating more of those increases to those who are under the market because we want to protect ourselves against their departure.
So my turn, please, Commissioner Pollard. If I'm understanding what you're saying, not every single employee is getting the 3%.
Oh, heavens no.
No, yeah, it's an average. I'm gonna get like probably 2 or less.
Less, I hope.
Dr. Whitcock's gonna get .3, point.
Did you address the chair? I'm just teasing. So I guess that's what I wanted to clarify, is that it already is staggered
It is
based on.
staggered based on where we're concerned about losing.
I always like giving people bonuses too, based on performance, but we don't really have that program here, so.
I didn't
I
realize
can
we
comment
didn't
on
have that.
pay for performance because I've lived under pay for performance and not non-pay for performance. My experience is that until inflation gets to a point where inflation needs to really be over 5% because that then allows you to have a cost of living plus a performance program increases based on performance. What happens is when those percentages of increase based on performance get so small, they fail to do anything for you. And the other side of that is most research about employee motivation is that an increase based on performance is able to continue that performance for about 2 paychecks. And then once you're at that point, you've reached a new level of expectation, and that increase fails to continue to motivate. Lots of other things, just helping people to know that they're doing a good job is a much better motivator. And again, we have such low inflation that trying to have a pay-for-performance program there's just not enough percentage to make it effective.
Madam President, I agree with that. I think pay for performance works with executives and higher level staff and not necessarily for the running.
You got to spend a lot of money on the table.
Yeah, but let me just express one more concern that I've had in this whole process, and that is that last year we depended heavily on what Jay Rodney told us about the expectation of Social Security increase would be. He said it would be 2%. We came.
Why bring me into this discussion?
Well, because I'm just recalling how we did it last year. There was a big discussion.
Your votes were based on and I think it's inappropriate for you to bring.
Commissioner Pollard?
I don't think it's inappropriate at all. I'm describing how we did it. Jay weighed in and said 2% is going to be the Social Security. We settled on 1.7, heavily influenced by that. What I'm concerned about is that when it's to the advantage of the staff to use Social Security, they use Social Security. When it's the advantage of the staff to use adjustment of job salaries, that is a job or reclassification and so forth, we use that. I'd like us to have a single standard, and we have not had a single standard. The Social Security played a big role last year. And once again, I'll remind you that federal employees, and this includes nurses at the VA, are getting a 0.3% increase. And Social Security, 0.3% increase. I think it would be generous if we had a 1% across the board increase, and with the understanding, staff, we need you to have some skin in the game this year for us to get our financial house in order. You're only going to get a 1% this year. You got a 1.7 last year. You're doing better than the feds and the Social Security. Join us in this effort. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard. Commissioner Young, do you have anything you want to say?
I'm going to say that, yes, there are differences in all kinds of employment opportunities. For instance, pension plans don't exist like they do at the VA, etc. And I think 3% is not a bad number.
Does anybody want to make a motion to either amend or to pass the agenda?
I would encourage you to entertain motions when we get to the activity.
Oh, that's what we have to have public
Right.
comment.
We have to do a public comment.
Thank you, yes. Is,
There's no public.
I know there's some,
She has
but
to
we
call.
still have to ask.
We're just still-
Is there anybody that wants to make a public comment? Seeing that there is no public here to make a public comment, then do I have a motion from,
Well, then we go to action item number one,
yes?
resolution
Yeah,
522
yeah.
dash.
Yeah. Is there a motion for resolution 522-1116 and approving and adopting the district's budget and tax levy and approving the limit factor for the regular property tax levy in calendar year 2017?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I do have a discussion. I wanted to make a motion to amend the budget to include the $75,000 contingency line item under other expense, a sub item of other expenses, and also make a motion to
One
reduce.
motion at a time, or is this
Okay.
all part of the
I
same
think this
motion?
is part of my motions, the same part of the motion is to reduce the increase somewhat, either down to 2 or 2.5%, and see if we can work with that for employees' wages.
For
I would
clarification
encourage you
for
to
the,
separate those two
Yeah.
separate motions.
Yeah.
okay, so what's the first, do we have the first motion?
Well, the first motion that John moved and Emma seconded is to approve the resolution 522-1116.
As is, as presented.
Well, and then David's amendatory motions are appropriate at that time, at this time.
Is there a second on David's motion?
This is just the line item,
Yeah.
75,000.
On the amendments, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I will have the opportunity to make an amendment also, will I not?
Anybody can make
Yeah,
an amendment.
anybody can.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll second, let's
I'll
start with,
second
I'll second.
David's motion, or
I
amendment.
think Emma said it
I
first. wasn't
second
it?
it.
That's
Emma
fine.
did.
Yeah, so Emma supports that motion.
Okay, I have a question, I guess, of Tom. From what I understand, everyone is not getting,
There's a motion on the table.
There's a
Yeah,
motion on the
to
table,
discuss it, and we have to vote on that.
$75,000 sub-account for contingencies. That's what's on the table now. So now there's discussion on that motion to amend.
Yes.
Or,
Yes,
as far
Commissioner
as
Pollard.
that particular motion,
That's fine.
I'd like to simply ask for clarification in what are the pros and cons for voting for this amendment? What does it do for us?
Well, do you want me to explain?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the 75,000, as I said before, 50,000 we may be needed for an affiliation consultant, so I want to make sure that's there. And then the other 25,000 is because of the past history of things coming up, which they do, and it's not abnormal to settle something 2 years after the fact, and then we get a bill for it. And I had a question, Steve, about it. I got on his case, I'm sorry, but that's what happened. That we finally reduced a $100,000 debt down to whatever it was, 14,000 or something. I don't remember. We paid 2 payments of 3,000. It might have been 18. I don't remember.
You envisioned
I
that,
don't
that 5 or 10,000 for Ivy Bailey would come out of that 25,000?
No,
Yeah.
no,
That's why they take
Mhm.
it out.
no. This is for things coming up
For
like.
stimulants.
Steve says, you know what? We issued a check in 2015 to this person, or 2016,
Clear.
and we had to reissue it because it never got cashed, and it's for $11,000, and we go, okay, so.
That's not additional expense, we already recognize that.
We've already recognized,
Yeah.
okay.
That's not an additional expense.
Right.
Well,
Because it goes back to it at 11,000, that's never been used.
But there,
Oh, that's
I think, I'm sorry to jump in, but your point is there are unexpected.
There are.
So
Yeah.
this is really a contingency
Right.
account.
right,
Set aside
right.
for emergencies and.
Well, we don't have to spend it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what it is.
I support it, so I call for the question.
Okay.
That requires another vote, 2/3 to end the debate. So maybe you could withdraw that, call for the question.
Okay, I withdraw that.
Okay.
Are we ready to vote on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Vote
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Abstain?
No, I said aye.
Oh, okay, it's unanimous.
Unanimous.
That motion
That's an amendment to the budget.
It's an amendment.
So now we got David's second.
Just, do you need any help? Do you know what we've done, Sal?
So what you just voted on unanimously is David's amendment,
That's
The
correct.
75,000
Is that correct?
Southern.
That is correct.
which
Yeah.
would read to remove $75,000 from other expenses
Mhm.
to a contingency sub-account as a separate line item.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on.
I'd like to offer an amendment.
Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
I would like to propose that we have a one-year moratorium on capital, unessential, non-essential capital expenses and on salary increases beyond 1%.
I think those should be two separate
Okay.
motions.
Okay,
One at a
I'll
time.
divide it up then, and that is, I suggest I move that we have a one-year moratorium on capital expenses if they are not deemed essential by the board.
Is there a second?
Is that David?
I would have seconded, if you want to do, can I have discussion
Yeah, we'll
at this
have a
time?
discussion.
I would have seconded, but what if there's an ROI, we can actually make money on it? And it's maybe not essential, but we can still make money.
As determined by the board.
Right.
It's essential and.
Then it's in the,
It's already in
it's
there.
already in there.
It's here.
It's already in there.
Right there.
We won't approve it.
If it's-
Well, we want you to say you won't approve it, but unless we pass a motion to that effect, you can change that without a consensus.
Could you repeat your motion and then, please?
I move that we have a one-year moratorium on capital expenditures that are not deemed essential by the board. Now, an ROI.
Not deemed essential and profit-making.
Wait.
I think it's appropriate to ask for a second.
Yes, is there a second? Hearing none, and we will move
Motion
on.
fails.
Motion fails.
Get another amendment?
I have a second amendment, and that is that we have a one-year moratorium on salary increases beyond 1%, based on the discussion of comparative COLAs. So I move that we have a one-year moratorium on salary expenditures until we have a better feel for our
Okay.
financial future.
So no, there's differences, because the
Yeah.
first time you said 1%, and then now you just said
Moratorium.
moratorium.
So which is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a moratorium, let's say, I move that we have a moratorium on all salary increases for 1 year.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is there a second? I'll ask one more time. Is there a second? Hearing none, then that motion fails.
I have a second amendment,
Amendment.
and that is that we limit the salary increases to 1% unless the staff can demonstrate a critical need that we need to meet in certain areas of the
Staffing.
of the staff.
I would suggest having staff come up with what they consider a critical need would be kind of hard to weigh? How do you know?
Okay, so he made the motion.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate now to ask for a second.
Is there a second?
Can we make an alternate motion?
We ask for a second to see if
This
it's...
has to either fail or...
Oh, okay. Is there a second? Hearing none, and we will move on.
Motion fails.
The motion fails. Emma, did you?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we look into the 2% increase for salary,
What does it mean to look into?
or to approve a 2% increase.
We'd like us to approve a 2%.
So the motion is to then have the salary increase lowered from 3% to 2%.
From 3% to 2%.
I second that.
All right, there's a second.
Discussion?
Is there any discussion?
I have, I guess, discussion question. Would, if we continued with the 3% or the 2%, whichever number goes, everyone will get a raise of that amount, or the raise will be gradated based on
You have
need?
the way that,
Yes, you may.
thank you.
Start with this again.
So there are 4 categories of salary increases in the structure that we have developed. So everywhere from the bottom of the range to the first quartile has a certain percentage. First quartile to midpoint to 75%, and 75% to the top. So what we would do under the proposed change is we would simply lower each of those percentage increases until the overall amount is at 2%. So we would still be able to provide a little bit more to people who are in the lower end of the range, thus helping to protect us against a flight of existing employees.
Okay, did we get a second? We did.
We did a second.
Commissioner Pollard.
My insight is, I want to protect us. I know there's an issue with keeping employees. We've had a few leave already. And we need to give the ones that we feel, I know our MAs need more money because they've been in and out. And I don't know what the magic number is. I'm not there. I'm not the line manager. I don't know what it is. And I don't know what our LMPs, do we have some of those?
LPN.
No, you don't? Okay. So I don't, some of these employees that are leaving, I guess the 2% I'd be in favor of. If it so happens that 3 months from now, we have a huge exodus still going on, and we have got problems, and we can't keep people here happy, that they're not making enough money, I would be very happy to revisit, to increase the budget for that, the employees. But right now, I think because the entire board has spoke, the most important thing is a balanced budget. And we have to be honest, we have to be realistic for this year. And without being that way, we're not representing the people that pay the taxes in the community. So I guess I would be in favor of a 2% at this time. That doesn't mean that we can't revisit it in a few months. We could take that contingency fund. We can take the, whatever we need to make sure that folks are happy here and we keep good employees. But I think at this point, it doesn't make sense with this kind of a loss this year to stay at 3%.
I guess my feeling is that we've already lost staff. We're already paying for new staff to be oriented. Again, because of the benchmarking that we did, we had people flee. So I'm not sure that I feel comfortable messing around with the salaries too much. And as long as if it's the way I understand it, those that need it more, that are lower pay, will get the more of the money, and the higher pay will get less. For instance, if you're a manager, you probably will get 0.5%.
Can I clarify?
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry. It's not based on how much you are paid. It's based on where you are in the range. So if every job has a different range, and if you are below the midpoint of that range, you're going to get a larger increase. The whole philosophy of that is that for the job that you're doing, we want people to be paid at a market rate. That's why we try to accelerate people to the midpoint, because that's the point at which somebody says, you know what, I'm getting paid what Dave down at the other hospital is getting paid for the same job.
Okay. So that clarifies, I guess that would be a concern of mine. Is there any other discussion? Commissioner Pollard?
To respond to what David said, I thought what he said was very revised. I still think we should have a moratorium for 1 year and get buy-in by...
But that's not the motion,
All
right?
right, here's my discussion then, that if you won't accept that. And that is, one of the problems that we have is we don't have data. We are data deficient as board members here. Where are the turnover reports from different categories of employees? We don't know. I mean, anything can be said, but we don't have the data on turnover. Anybody can say, well, we're losing all our nurses. Wait a minute, where's the data? We need more data, and we feel, I think, all more comfortable discussing these things if we have the data.
So we don't need the data.
I don't have those specifics for it, so to your point, I don't have that specifics. I do know that we did lose some nurses during the benchmarking, and that sum was approximately, don't hold me on this, but I believe we lost about 4 or 5 of our inpatient nursing staff.
I guess what I'm asking for is, could we get a regular report from personnel on things like our turnover
Yes,
of
we
employees?
can provide you turnover rates.
But I think the turnover was from 12 to 8-hour shifts, a lot of them were. That was the reason. So it wasn't necessarily a bad situation, it was just the different kind of flexibility that they were being able to have 3 days off or whatever like that, 4 days.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the motion?
And could we, the motion is David's amendment? Is that
It's
what
Emma's
you're
motion.
Excuse me, my
Commissioner
motion.
Pollard, please.
Emma's motion, seconded by Commissioner Pollard, to lower salary increases from 3% to 2%.
All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
And I'm going to abstain.
Could we have
So
a roll call recorded on that, please? I think you can determine that without actually calling the roll, but I'd like to have the minutes reflect how commissioners voted.
All right, your tape will not reflect that, just the minutes then.
Pardon?
It won't be reflected on the tape.
Okay,
But the minutes
but the
The
minutes
minutes
will
will,
reflect it,
yes.
that's fine, thank you.
Okay, next item of business.
Well, now we have to do the resolution.
That's what I was going to do.
You're way ahead.
Okay, so we have Resolution 522-1116, approving and adopting the district's budget and tax levy and approving a limit factor for the regular property tax levy in calendar year 2017. Is there a motion?
Did we not
So
make
moved
that
already.
one? It's already been moved and
And moved
seconded.
and seconded.
Okay.
Moved by Commissioner Young, seconded by Commissioner Herring.
Okay, then we,
Discussion?
any discussion on this?
Okay, let me see if I understand what's going on.
We're voting on
We're voting on the first
The first
item
one.
on the action agenda,
Yes.
is that
That's
correct?
correct. That is correct, Commissioner Pollard.
Now, that has been amended
Correct.
by Commissioner Herron's motion to reduce
No, it
the
was,
salary to
Correct.
2%.
Yes.
Okay,
So it would be as amended.
all right, now, thank you for clarifying, I'm very conflicted about this because I feel that we should have a moratorium on salary increases. I don't know whether it's appropriate to say that now or at all.
Well,
Well,
that
we-
motion has been debated, and so now we have before you the resolution
As amended.
for final approval.
At what point can one, I think under our bylaws, we can submit a letter as to how we voted and so forth, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think you can always submit a letter. I think the bylaw revision provides for, I think,
Yep.
like, I think it was like
letter after
Yeah,
you tell us
absolutely.
10 days or something.
I put that in.
I guess I'm going to abstain because I still feel Northam is the best. And so therefore, I just want to explain to my fellow commissioners why I'm abstaining.
Okay.
I think some constructive work has been done here, and I generally support this as a superior to the original resolution, but because I feel so strongly about and worried so much about our financial situation, I'm going to abstain from approving this.
Okay, with that, I have a question. Does that include the amendment that we just?
Yes.
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 With the 2%?
Yes,
which
it
is
does.
agreed on?
Yes,
Yes.
the 2%
That
is
we
part of
agreed
the
on.
motion, is part
So
of
now
the
you're
action.
abstaining, is what you're saying?
I'm abstaining because I think 2% is still too much, given the fact that Social Security is 0.3 and federal employees, including.
Okay, Commissioner Pollard, we need,
your rest of the comments to the chair.
yeah, and I think we need to move on. Does anybody else have any comments before we vote on this resolution? All right, then we will go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of the, as amended, Resolution 522-1116, approving and adopting the district's budget and tax levy and approving the limit factor for the regular property tax levy in calendar year 2017. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I abstain.
All right, one abstention. Okay, next item of business is Resolution 523-1116, approving and adopting the regular property tax levy for 2017.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Do we need any explanation of this from our attorney? Does everybody understand what this is? Okay.
No, I don't understand because my understanding was that these property tax adjustments are done automatically without any action of the board.
Now, under issue 747, which was passed by the voters, I think, for about 10 years ago, property tax levy rates are capped at 1%, but the governing body still needs to approve that 1% increase.
So still needs to be
Yes.
approved. Okay, I thought it was automatic.
No.
All right, got it.
All righty. All right. Is there any other discussion?
I do have, and every year for the last, this is the third year, I've asked if we're going to do this, that the money gets set aside in a fund to pay off future, when the bonds become due, and I think one is in 14 years from now. That's what I wanted to have happen with this, as to make it, to let the people know we're trying to do the best we can to pay off our
We have a
taxes.
plan, is what we want to do.
Yeah, and so, but I haven't seen that. I keep on hearing that we're using this money to pay off our operations and current debt service.
Would you like to make some kind of amendment?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not in here. Every year I ask for it, and I thought that we did this from now on. And so, again, and then I was informed that it was only going to be $1,600, but I see on this it's $131,000, so, or $113,000. So which is it, $1,600 or $113,000?
The difference between the two tax levies, the 1% and the 0.953%, is $1,669.
And which one is this? 600 and...
$1,669.
Well, this says $113,192.
That's the increase over last year's levy. So
And
we're
that's
talking
the-
two different things.
Well, that's,
Okay, so
aren't we putting the $113,000 each time that we increase, that this increase goes directly into an
that would
account?
have to be, I believe, that would be a motion this year.
So last
We
year,
can't carry it
I
forward.
actually recall this specifically.
Yeah.
Last year, we had a similar situation. There was the 1% tax levy, and then there was something less than that. And the board needed to approve going to the full 1%. At that time, the board passed on motion saying that the difference between the 1% and the
lower amount.
the lower amount, that difference be set aside for debt reduction. And that amount comes in.
Will come in.
Next month, and we will set that aside for debt reduction. And so the same question can come before the board tonight, and that is this year again, there is a difference between the 1% and the lower tax levy amount. And if you would like that, the difference isn't as much this year, but if you would like that amount to be set aside for tax reduction or debt reduction, you can certainly do that.
How much is that amount?
That this year's $1,669.
Well, see, I'm a little confused, Steve. I know you get, I'm pestering you, but I'm not trying to pester you. I'm just trying to get some answers. So this right here says on this resolution, be it resolved, the district regular property tax is hereby authorized for levy to be collected in 2017 in the amount of the increase to be $113,000.
Can I explain this to you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you please? I don't
So,
understand.
Under state law, the board can authorize a 1% increase. However, because of this, what's called the implicit price deflator, because that is below 1%, the board has to adopt a special resolution to go up to the full 1%. Otherwise, you'd be capped at 0.953%.
Yeah.
All right? So, if you want to stay capped at 0.953%, the amount is going to be $113,092 minus $1,669.
Yeah.
If the board wants to levy the full 1%, it's going to be the full $113,192.
Well, where does the $113,000 go to then?
That goes to our debt service.
Our present debt service?
Correct.
Not for future debt service?
Right. So, but last year, that 1669 amount
Yeah.
was more. That was, I think, it was closer to 30,000.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this year, it's 1669. So last year, the board adopted that resolution because, again, we were in a situation where the implicit price deflator was less than 1%. So in order to levy the full 1%, you needed to adopt a special resolution, which is the same one before you here today.
Yeah, oh, I understand that.
And that delta, that difference, then you assigned to debt reduction, future debt reduction.
So-
Last year was 30,000.
Could I ask
Yeah.
a question, Madam President?
This Commissioner Spikers is done with
So,
Jay Rodney.
so last year, we should be getting, for last year, we should be getting in December, how much? $1,669?
No, we will get.
30,000?
We will get that next year, Dave.
Okay, so the 30,000.
30,000 comes in next month.
Okay, got it. All right, now I get it. See, I was wondering why there's such difference this year.
Exactly.
I was wondering, how did that, I mean,
The
okay.
30,000 will come in December, that last 30,000.
Okay,
Right.
Okay.
And that will be set aside.
okay,
That's what we will
I
set
got
aside
it.
this year.
So it's $1,669, okay,
It's-
all right.
Okay,
All right.
all right. Commissioner Pollard.
I want to ask Jay, now, to make this concrete for people like me, and that is, well, how does this affect the person's property taxes? Let's say that has a $300,000 house. How will this affect their property taxes?
Well,
The public wants to know
right.
we're getting out of debt, and they don't want to see more property taxes coming from the hospital district.
Right.
So could you estimate how much the person's going to have to pay?
I can't answer that question. I mean, I think that what the district is doing is increasing its levy, its property tax rate by 1%. Now, keep in mind, though, is that the amount per thousand, that's always a fluctuating amount based on the assessed value of the district,
Yeah.
based on new construction,
Yeah.
based on, so, and the more assessed value, the lower the property tax that people have to pay. We're capped at 50%, 50 cents per thousand.
See, what I'm hearing from the public is they want to see a plan from the hospital.
on how we're going to get out of this $100 million debt. And let me ask this question. Maybe it's off the wall, but what if we took this 1% and we said that all of that is going to debt reduction for the hospital?
It is.
All of it, 100%.
It is. It is. That's our bond amortization schedule.
Basically,
Yeah.
It's tied to
We
bonds.
get out of debt by paying our debt payments every year, and it's a 30-year.
100%.
Well, I was a little confused about this $1,600 difference and the $30,000 that's coming up soon. Those are going to...
That would just be additional amounts to debt relief.
That would be set aside, and I'll just tell you, most likely paid in year 30.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk with the public, we can tell them that the levy increase approved by the board is all going to debt reduction. Always.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's a very important point to be able to say.
I think
Well,
you're
that
right.
was my only reason to do this, is if it was. But I still don't understand, where's the, I still don't understand, it says it increased by 113,000. The entire district increased by 130, the amount, it says here,
All the property in the district.
So we take our levy from last year, raise 1%, and that percent difference is $113,192.
yeah. And so, but most of that goes to present debt
Yes.
deduction.
The LTGOs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
it.
All the LTGOs.
So,
Yeah.
but,
LTGOs.
okay.
But then there's also excess.
So are we paying extra on this debt?
No.
We're just,
paying based on the bond amortization.
so we're reducing the amounts that we are scheduled to pay on a monthly basis to our debt.
Twice a year, we have a debt service payment due and we pay that.
Yep,
It's
I
based
know.
on the bond amortization schedule.
So, if we didn't accept this 113,000, it would have to come out of our operating revenue to pay this 113,000, right?
You'd have to,
Yes.
in other words, to
Yes.
bank the 113,000,
If you don't,
if we can't do it this way, we'd have to take it out of operating expenses. If we were to bank that amount of money.
put the
Is that
bonds
right? Is that what you're
back
asking, David?
Yeah.
by
Yeah, the levy though is what pays our bond debt.
Now, does this go only to LTGOs? The revenue bonds don't get mixed into this, do they?
No.
Revenue bonds do not get tax money
Right.
to pay them off.
Thank you.
It's only tax bonds.
Well, I guess I'm in favor, if it completely is paying debt, then I'm okay with that.
So are we ready to vote?
So,
Clear?
I'm sorry.
Clarification.
Knock my head, Dave,
Point-
late, I had a
Point of
long week.
clarification, please.
Can we say that the recommendation from the finance committee is do pass?
To pass this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Because I think we
Yes.
should have a recommendation from the finance.
Yes. Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor of passing Resolution 523-1116, approving and adopting regular property tax levy for 2017? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes unanimously.
All right.
And can we put in our notes that the discussion was about where all of this would be put? It would be put 100% to paying the district's debt, please?
Right.
Yes.
Just a summary of just a sentence, if you could, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. For the record. All right, is there any other business that needs to be discussed? I guess we can't, good.
Just ready next regular meeting.
Next regular meeting will be Thursday, December 8th, 2016, at 6:30 p.m., Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, North Sound Conference Room. Do I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Would you call that the next irregular meeting, or the next regular meeting?
I said next regular meeting.
We could have another board meeting though on Sunday. Today's the 221st birthday, Nancy. Today's the 221st birthday, Nancy. Today's 221st birthday, Nancy. Today's